So here's the thing. Books are awesome. They can be written by incredibly smart people, probably one of the smartest of all right here. They can be written about things that will definitely help you grow your business. But for every book that gets written that becomes really well known in the entrepreneur business world, that gets read a lot, there's a couple of books that no one really knows exist. So in this video, because I'm such a nerd of books, I'm going to run you through 4 books that every entrepreneur should read if they want to grow their business that you've probably never heard of. Let's get started. All right, David White here from That Marketing Show. Obviously, I'm a nerd for books and I love helping business owners grow their companies. So here are 4 recommendations for you of books that you've probably never heard of before, but really should spend some time reading. So 2 criteria that I'm using for choosing these books. Criteria number 1, probably the nicest way I can say this is, have you ever read a book that was like 450 pages long and you read it and then at the end you thought, you probably could have said that in like 100 words. So we're not looking for those kind of books, because buying a book is not so much about like the $40 that you'll spend on it or whatever a book costs these days. It's about the time that you put into it. So category or criteria number 1, these books actually have to be useful the whole way through. And criteria number 2 is that these books have to be about something sexy and fun, which is getting more customers and making more sales. Because I'm sure there are a whole bunch of great books out there about how to lead a team or how to do HR or accounting stuff. I'm biased. I like the fun stuff, talking about how to get a whole bunch more customers. So let's get started with book number 1 by a gentleman called Donald Miller, author of Building a Story Brand. Oh man, what's it called? Building a Story Brand. That's the name of his other book. This one is called How to Grow Your Small Business. I've just finished reading this and holy smokes, this is a good book. So let me bring up my little visual aid here to share with you. Here is the essential premise of everything that he says. Your business is almost exactly like a plane. So it has a cockpit at the front, and that's you. That is the leadership part of your business. The plane has a right engine and a left engine, which are represented by sales and marketing. The plane has wings, which is your product, and the plane has a body, which is like all the stuff that it's got to carry around. So apologies to people in human resources, but like those are people who don't make money that you have to kind of carry with you. Same about accountants. And then there's like delivering your products. That doesn't make you money, but you have to do it. And then finally, you've got your fuel tanks, which is cash flow. So if you think about your business like a plane like this, which is a brilliant metaphor, hopefully he doesn't mind me stealing this image I found on the internet. Such a brilliant metaphor. It becomes really clear that you need to have a good balance between things that drive you forward, which is your sales and marketing. You need to have a good balance between your engine and your products. So that's the wings. Like you can't have really strong engines with tiny flimsy wings. You can't have a body that is too bloated, for want of a better term. And you need to have enough fuel in the tank to get you where it is that you're trying to go. Now, with that said, in the middle of this book, there is a colored section. You probably can't see this all that well. That is all about the left engine, which is sales. And holy smokes, this section of the book is worth reading by itself. Like if I paid $40 for that middle section about Donald's ideas on how to sell your product, I would be totally happy with that. So book number 1, Donald Miller, How to Grow Your Small Business. Book number 2, you've probably heard of this guy, one of the greatest that ever did it, Mr. Ogilvy, founder of Ogilvy and Mather. Not this particular book we're talking about right now, because I know that you've probably read or at the very least heard about it. We're talking about a book written by the vice chairman of Ogilvy, a gentleman by the name of Rory Sutherland, and the book is called Alchemy, the dark art and curious science of creating magic in brands, business, and life. I love this book. This had so much useful information about thinking through problems in business, coming up with novel ways to position your product, to approach your customers, to have them thinking about your product. So I got a couple of quick ideas here that really stuck out to me from what he said in this book. Number 1, the opposite of a good idea can also be a really good idea sometimes. And I see this quite a lot when I'm working with business owners. They're doing things that make sense. They're doing things that are working, but largely because of the fact that I am not like in the business, I would approach things differently and I can suggest to them, hey, why don't we try this? And you know what? Both ideas can be right. So the opposite of a good idea, let's say if your approach to getting leads is X, or your approach to creating content is X, or your approach to the way that you position your products to the leads that you get is X. Trying something different, trying something that maybe no one else in your industry is doing, getting outside opinion ideas, even if it's different to the very good ideas that you're currently working on right now. The opposite of a good idea can sometimes also be a really good idea. The second thought that came out of this book for me that I really loved was this idea of satisficing. So in a nutshell, this concept can be broken down into people will be willing to pay a premium for a product sometimes if they know that that means there's a lower chance that the product is going to be crap. There's no other way of saying it. People will do that. So if you have a product that is very, very good and you're okay with charging a higher amount of money for it, and you can demonstrate to people, hey, like the worst, let's say if you're an ad agency like Ogilvy and Mather, the worst performing client that we had last year got this amount of return on ad spend. Or if you can share like, hey, our average person achieved this. Of course, you don't want to make promises that you can't keep in your advertising, but people will pay a premium for a really good product, but they'll also pay a premium for a product that they know has like a lower chance of being not very good or making them regret their buying decision. So satisficing, he goes through that a lot in this book. Really interesting idea. And the third thing that Mr. Sutherland shares in his book is this idea of the magic behind your product and how it can make people feel better when they're using it. So he gives an example of a really famous Australian legal case that happened a couple of years ago where a painkiller company called, I think it was Nurofen, it might have been Panadol. Essentially, they released a whole bunch of different brands of painkillers. So there was like Panadol tension headache, Panadol migraine, Panadol toothache, Panadol backache, Panadol osteoarthritis pain. And after a bit of examination, it turned out all these things are exactly the same. But the fact that the people who were buying those painkillers thought that like, hey, this is a special formulation specifically for my tension headache really made a difference. Another example that he gives of like the magic of your product is that people are more likely to buy a toothpaste with like a different colored strip running down the middle of it than just a single colored toothpaste, because if there's a different colored strip running down the middle of your toothpaste, that must mean there's 2 ingredients in there, which must mean it works really well. So the way people think about products and the way that you present it for them to think about, they like to know kind of the magic, or to know that there is some kind of magic or stuff happening behind the scenes that they didn't really know about. So really interesting idea from this book. Rory says if he had a painkiller company like Panadol or Nurofen or whatever, he would actually not sell tablets. He'd send you like a little package and it would be like 3 jars and you've got to mix them together and then you take the shot. And it wouldn't matter if that was exactly the same kind of stuff as you get in a tablet, but he says just the very process of knowing like, hey, I've got to do these 3 things in this order to get this painkiller to work properly, even if you don't have to. That is what makes the product look really appealing. So if there is magic behind your product, even if it's super obvious, don't be afraid to highlight that to your audience. I've got another really good example of this for you from a book that's over there called Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins. So when Claude started working with Jack Daniels, it was either Claude or Ogilvy, I can't remember, one of the two. When they started working with Jack Daniels, they were doing all this research into how does the product actually get made? What is the process behind making bourbon? And the brewers described it to him and he was like, dude, this is magic. You put it in these special charred wooden oak sort of cast barrel-y things and you let it sit there for 36 months and you only use like the purest water, and every single sort of batch of bourbon comes from the same like mother piece of yeast or whatever. And they were like, yeah, that's how you make bourbon. And he said, we got to go and tell this to our audience. And because of telling that story about what was cool and the magic behind the product, Jack Daniels became one of the biggest brands in the world. So if you're a bourbon advertiser and you saw Jack Daniels saying, we use charred oak for our barrels and specially purified water so that there's nothing in it, you'd be like, well, so do we. But they were the better ones at telling the story of the magic of their product. So I'm kind of rambling on here. I'll stop now. Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, must read. Now, the third book that we've got to talk about is one that I don't have a physical copy of. It is called Ultimate Sales machine. The full title is actually Ultimate Sales Machine. Turbocharge your business with relentless focus on 12 key strategies. So Chet Holmes was brilliant. Chet Holmes was like the Tony Robbins of business, but his career kind of ended at the start of like the information on the internet age. Sadly, his life was cut short. I wish he was still around. He was such a great dude. But he had some really interesting thoughts about marketing, getting more customers, growing your business, tightening up your processes, all these sorts of things. I want to share one with you right now. So if you're going to be really good at marketing to your audience, that means you need to know what is a market. Like for you to do marketing, you really have to know what is a market. So here's what Chet had to say about that. He said, imagine all the people who know that your business exists. Now, well, probably a better way of saying it would be, imagine all the people who should buy from your business, right? Their phone broke, they need a new phone, or they drive around, their car's kind of old, they need a new car, or they're not in perfect shape, they need to join a gym. Whoever it is that should buy from your business, we can break them up into different groups. So there's 30% of your market who ain't never going to buy from you, essentially is what I've got written down here. 30% of your market will never buy. So let's just not include them for a minute. 30% of your market are not interested in your product and don't think it's for them. Now, another fancy way of saying this that they taught me at university is they're problem unaware. Another 30% of your market is interested, but not yet thinking about buying. 7% of your market is actively thinking about buying. And finally, 3% of your market is in the process of buying whatever it is that you sell right now. So if you look at this pyramid, and yes, I just used the word pyramid and the word marketing in the same sentence. I know that's very dangerous to do. If you look at this pyramid, your job as a business owner who is in charge of marketing your product is to do one thing. It's to move people from the bottom of this pyramid, like excluding the bottom 30%, move them up the pyramid. If they don't think that your product is a fit for them and they're not interested and they're not thinking about what it might be like to buy from you, you got to turn them into someone who is interested in the sort of stuff that you do. Those people who are interested in the sort of solutions that you provide, you've got to get them to think about buying your product, and then you've got to get them to the place where they are actually buying whatever it is that you sell. Really interesting idea here from Chet. Love this one. The final book, which I have mentioned on this show before, The Discipline of Market Leaders by Michael Treacy and Fred. Again, apologies, Fred. I can't pronounce that. I'm not going to butcher it for you. So the whole premise of this idea is that there are certain things about products that make people want to buy. And if you know what it is about your product that people want to buy or that would make them pull out their credit card and say like, yep, I'd rather have what it is that you got than the money that I have right now. Let's do a swap. You need to know what your product means to them. So if we pull up my slides here, essentially there are 3 disciplines that a business can have. And the first discipline that you can have is the most obvious one. You can have the best product. You can also have something called customer intimacy, which is the most sort of tailored, unique approach to that particular customer's problem that anyone in the industry could have. Or thirdly, you could have operational excellence. So examples of each of these: product leadership, the first one that jumps to mind for me is Rolls-Royce. Because they have the best car in the market, people who want product leadership are going to go to Rolls-Royce rather than Mercedes or Audi or BMW or Jaguar or anything like that, because Rolls-Royce knows, hey, this is our thing, and they tell people that. Secondly, you've got this idea of customer intimacy. So for me to demonstrate this, the easy example that I go to is if all things were totally equal and we've got a chiropractor over here who knows like a couple of stretches for the shoulder, and we've got a chiropractor over here who knows exactly how to assess the shoulder and how nutrition affects the shoulder and how posture affects the shoulder and the way that you sleep affects your shoulder. If you tear your rotator cuff, this guy who knows exactly how to treat the specific injury that you've got should beat this guy. So customer intimacy is all about tailoring the solution for whatever problem it is that your audience comes to you for as specifically as you can to their particular circumstance. And the last one, of course, is operational excellence, which is kind of, can you deliver the product cheaply or more cheaply than anyone else in your industry. So the example might be Walmart. Another instance of operational excellence might be if you own a private jet company, does the fact that people don't have to queue up for 19 hours to check in their bags and go through customs and all that sort of stuff, does that make a difference to their experience? So your private jet doesn't necessarily need to be like super fancy and stuff, but just the fact that people don't have to queue up for it, whereas they would need to queue up for a commercial flight, that's an example of operational excellence. So that might be, it might be price, it might be something else that you deliver that makes the sort of buying process or the using process easier for your customers. I feel like I feel like I'm butchering this a little bit as I try to explain it. But this book, if you read it, now this is going back to the first criteria that I said. This is a couple of 100-page book. You're only going to need to read a third of this because only one of these disciplines is going to apply to your company. So whichever discipline it is, you're only going to have to read that section of this book. But that one will really change the way that you think about your product. So there you have it. 4 books: Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes, How to Build Your Small Business by Donald Miller, Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, and The Discipline of Market Leaders by Michael Treacy and Fred. Those books, I'm guessing that you don't know too much about them, but they're really good. These people are really smart. They're kind of sleeper books, if you will. And if you want to grow your business and get more customers and sales, I thoroughly recommend you go and check them out. So let me know in the comments. Have you got any other ideas of sleeper books that not a lot of people know about, but they should be reading? Let us know. And as always, here's a couple more videos that you can check out about things that you can do to grow your business. And I'll see you in the next video.